Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, 30,000 years ago, and realizing the campfire has almost gone out, while the world beyond its fading glow has disappeared into complete darkness. There are no streetlights, no flashlights, no walls, and no locks protecting you from whatever might be moving through the night beyond the edge of your vision. A branch suddenly snaps somewhere in the distance, followed by another strange sound that seems much closer than the first one. You cannot see what made the noise, you cannot identify where it came from, and you cannot know whether it represents danger or nothing at all. That uncertainty is exactly what made darkness so frightening for our ancestors, and why fear of the dark may be one of humanity's oldest survival instincts. Even today, many people feel uneasy when walking alone at night, entering a dark room, or hearing an unexplained noise after sunset. Children often ask for nightlights, while adults who feel perfectly safe during the day can become noticeably more cautious when darkness surrounds them. At first glance, this reaction seems strange, because darkness itself cannot harm anyone, and is simply the absence of light. But for most of human history, darkness was never experienced as an empty space, because it changed the way humans interacted with the world around them. During the day, ancient humans could spot movement in the distance, recognize landmarks, identify animals, and detect potential threats before they became immediate dangers. Their ability to see clearly provided information about the environment and helped them make decisions that improved their chances of survival. When the sun disappeared below the horizon, much of that information vanished along with the daylight and left people operating with far greater uncertainty. Familiar paths became harder to recognize, distant sounds became harder to explain, and ordinary places could suddenly feel unfamiliar and unpredictable. A harmless animal moving through nearby bushes could sound identical to a predator stalking through the darkness beyond the camp. The problem was not that darkness created danger where none existed, but that darkness made genuine dangers much harder to detect and understand. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived in environments where the night often increased vulnerability and reduced awareness at the same time. Communities that treated darkness with caution were generally more likely to avoid unnecessary risks than those that ignored the challenges of the night. Over countless generations, that caution became deeply rooted within human psychology and may still influence behavior today. What modern people experience as fear of the dark may actually be the echo of ancient lessons learned by ancestors who survived because they respected the dangers hidden beyond the firelight. To understand why this fear became so powerful, we first need to understand what happened when darkness removed one of humanity's greatest advantages. Because once the sun went down, the world changed in ways that modern people rarely experience, and ancient humans could never afford to ignore. When the sun disappeared below the horizon, ancient humans lost something they depended on more than almost any other survival tool: the ability to see clearly. Humans are exceptionally visual creatures, which means much of the information we use to understand the world comes through our eyes during daylight hours. A person standing on an open grassland during the day could often spot animals, landmarks, weather changes, and potential threats from considerable distances. That ability provided time to react, adjust plans, or avoid danger before it became an immediate problem. Darkness changed all of that within a matter of hours and transformed a familiar environment into something far less predictable. Imagine standing beside a campfire and looking toward a tree line that you crossed confidently only a few hours earlier. During daylight, every tree, rock, and path seemed obvious and easy to recognize. But now those same features have dissolved into shadows. The landscape itself has not changed, yet your ability to interpret it has become dramatically weaker. This created a serious problem because ancient humans relied on information to survive, and darkness removed a large portion of that information. A strange movement that would be instantly recognized during the day became an unexplained shadow after sunset. A distant sound that could easily be identified in daylight became a mystery when visibility disappeared. The human brain dislikes uncertainty because uncertainty makes it harder to predict what might happen next. When people cannot clearly understand their surroundings, the brain naturally becomes more alert and more cautious. That response may feel uncomfortable, but it serves an important purpose, because caution can reduce the chances of making dangerous mistakes. The situation became even more challenging because many animals were far better adapted to nighttime conditions than humans. Predators such as large cats, wolves, and hyenas often remained highly effective hunters after dark, thanks to superior night vision, hearing, or smell. While ancient humans struggled to gather information from the environment, many predators continued operating with relatively little difficulty. Darkness, therefore, did not affect every species equally, and often shifted the balance in favor of animals that hunted at night. This helps explain why the ancient night felt fundamentally different from the day, rather than simply being a darker version of it. The same forest, grassland, or valley could feel familiar and manageable during daylight, but become uncertain and intimidating after sunset. Ancient humans understood this reality through direct experience, because they encountered it every single day of their lives. As a result, nighttime demanded different behaviors, different priorities, and different strategies for staying safe. People traveled less, paid closer attention to unusual sounds, and often stayed near others who could help if something unexpected occurred. The night rewarded cooperation, because groups were far better equipped to manage uncertainty than isolated individuals. And that is exactly why ancient humans responded to darkness in a way that would eventually become one of the defining features of human survival. They gathered together around something that could push back the darkness itself: fire. As darkness spread across the landscape, ancient humans responded in a way that may feel surprisingly familiar to anyone who has ever sought comfort during a frightening situation. They moved closer together. Families gathered near one another, children remained close to parents, and community members gradually returned to shared camps before the night became too dark. This behavior was not simply a cultural tradition or a matter of convenience. It was one of the most effective survival strategies available, in a world where visibility disappeared every evening. A lone person sitting in the darkness faced every danger alone, while a group could share awareness, protection, and responsibility. If someone heard an unusual sound beyond the camp, multiple people could pay attention rather than relying on a single individual. If danger appeared unexpectedly, the group could react together instead of forcing one person to handle the threat alone. The presence of other people also reduced uncertainty because familiar voices, movements, and routines created a sense of predictability. In many ways, the camp became a small island of order, surrounded by a much larger world that could no longer be clearly seen. At the center of that island stood one of the most important discoveries in human history. Fire transformed the human relationship with darkness more dramatically than almost any other innovation ever developed. A campfire provided warmth, but its importance extended far beyond protection from cold temperatures. The light from a fire allowed people to continue seeing faces, tools, food, and movement long after the sun had disappeared. The flames created a visible boundary between what was known and what remained hidden in the darkness beyond. Inside that circle of light, people could talk, repair tools, prepare food, tell stories, and relax with greater confidence. Outside that circle, uncertainty still existed, but the fire pushed it farther away and made it easier to manage. Many predators were also cautious around flames, which meant fire could reduce the likelihood of dangerous encounters during the night. Although a campfire could not eliminate every threat, it often provided enough protection to improve the chances of surviving until morning. This may help explain why campfires became such an important part of human social life for thousands of generations. People did not gather around fire only because it was useful. They gathered around it because it represented safety. Imagine sitting beside a fire while listening to the sounds of the wilderness beyond the edge of the light. The darkness still exists, but it feels more distant than before. Family members are nearby, familiar voices fill the air, and the fire continues burning between the group and the unknown. That feeling of security became deeply embedded within human experience. Yet even the brightest campfire had limits, because its light could only reach so far into the surrounding darkness. Beyond the edge of the firelight, predators still moved through the landscape. Strange sounds still emerged from unseen places, and uncertainty still waited in the shadows. The fire reduced fear, but it never removed the need for fear completely. And that is exactly why evolution did not eliminate fear from the human mind. Instead, it transformed fear into one of humanity's most valuable survival tools. At first glance, fear may seem like a weakness that prevents people from acting confidently when challenges appear. Many modern cultures celebrate fearlessness and often portray courage as the complete absence of fear. But evolution rarely rewards fearlessness for its own sake. Evolution rewards behaviors that improve the chances of survival. And fear has been doing exactly that for a very long time. Imagine hearing a sudden noise somewhere beyond the edge of the firelight, while everyone around you is preparing to sleep. You cannot see what produced the sound, and you have very little information available to explain it. The noise might be harmless, but it might also signal a genuine threat approaching the camp. In that situation, fear becomes useful because it encourages caution before certainty is possible. Fear focuses attention on potential danger and motivates people to gather more information before taking action. Without that response, ancient humans would have been far more likely to ignore warning signs that sometimes indicated real threats. The individuals who survived were not necessarily the boldest people in every situation. Often they were the people who paid attention when something felt wrong. Over thousands of generations, this tendency became deeply embedded within human psychology. The human brain evolved to treat uncertainty carefully, because uncertainty often concealed risks that could not yet be seen. This helps explain why fear and darkness became so closely connected throughout human history. Darkness reduced information, and reduced information increased uncertainty. The brain responded by becoming more alert whenever visibility disappeared and unexplained events occurred nearby. Importantly, fear is not the same thing as panic. Panic can lead to poor decisions, because it overwhelms a person's ability to think clearly. Fear, on the other hand, can improve survival when it encourages attention, caution, and preparation. An ancient human who immediately investigated every strange sound carelessly might encounter danger unexpectedly. A cautious person who paused, listened carefully, and evaluated the situation first often had a better chance of avoiding unnecessary risks. From an evolutionary perspective, a false alarm usually carries a smaller cost than ignoring a real threat. If a strange sound turns out to be harmless, a cautious person loses only a little time and energy. If the same sound turns out to be dangerous, that caution may prevent injury or death. This imbalance helps explain why the human brain often prefers being overly careful rather than insufficiently careful. The cost of unnecessary caution is usually small. The cost of ignoring a genuine threat can be enormous. For ancient humans living in unpredictable environments, this strategy often made sense. The fear of darkness, therefore, was not a flaw in human psychology. It was a protective adaptation shaped by countless nights during which uncertainty and danger frequently appeared together. The remarkable thing is that many of these ancient survival systems continue operating today, even though the world around us has changed dramatically. Modern people rarely face the same nighttime dangers that confronted their ancestors. Yet the emotional responses shaped by those dangers remain surprisingly familiar, and that may explain why fear of the dark continues to influence human behavior thousands of years after the ancient night lost much of its power. Modern civilization has transformed the way humans experience darkness, but it has not completely erased the instincts that evolved long before electric lights existed. Today, we illuminate streets, homes, offices, and entire cities with a level of brightness that would have seemed miraculous to our ancestors. We lock doors before going to sleep, build secure shelters, and carry powerful flashlights in devices that fit inside our pockets. For many people, nighttime is now safer than almost any other period in human history. Yet fear of the dark remains remarkably common despite all of these changes. Children often ask for nightlights, even when they know their homes are safe. Many adults feel uneasy walking alone through unfamiliar places after sunset. A strange sound heard in a dark house can still trigger an immediate feeling of alertness before logic has time to respond. The persistence of these reactions reveals something important about human evolution. Technology can change the environment very quickly, but biological instincts often change much more slowly. Electric lighting became widespread only within the last few generations, while humans spent hundreds of thousands of years adapting to a world where darkness genuinely increased danger. From an evolutionary perspective, modern cities are incredibly new. The instincts that shaped human behavior developed in a completely different environment. They developed in camps illuminated by fire rather than electricity. They developed in landscapes where visibility disappeared after sunset, and uncertainty increased dramatically. This may help explain why some ancient responses remain active, even when the original dangers are largely gone. Researchers studying sleep have identified a phenomenon known as the first night effect, in which part of the brain remains slightly more alert when sleeping in an unfamiliar location. The brain appears to behave as though it is still evaluating the safety of a new environment. This response makes much more sense when viewed through the lens of ancient human survival. For our ancestors, unfamiliar sleeping locations often carried genuine risks that demanded caution. Many modern behaviors may reflect similar evolutionary influences. People generally prefer well-lit environments to completely dark ones. Most individuals feel safer when trusted companions are nearby. Children frequently seek comfort from parents when darkness feels frightening. These reactions may not be random quirks of human psychology. They may be echoes of strategies that improved survival for countless generations. The modern world removed many nighttime dangers, but it did not erase the minds shaped by those dangers. Deep within the human brain, ancient survival systems continue influencing how people respond to uncertainty, isolation, and darkness. The next time you feel uneasy in a dark place, remember that your reaction may not be irrational at all. It may be the product of thousands of generations of ancestors who survived because they treated the night with respect. And that realization leads to a fascinating conclusion. Perhaps humans are not afraid of darkness itself. Perhaps we are afraid of what darkness prevents us from knowing. The story of humanity's fear of the dark is really the story of how humans learned to survive in a world filled with uncertainty. For most of human history, darkness was not an inconvenience that could be solved by flipping a switch. It was a daily reminder that information was limited, danger could be hidden, and survival often depended on caution. The same landscape that felt familiar during daylight could become unpredictable after sunset, because vision, one of humanity's greatest strengths, became far less reliable. Predators gained advantages, navigation became more difficult, and even ordinary sounds became harder to interpret. In that environment, fear was not a weakness that held people back from success. It was a tool that encouraged attention when attention mattered most. It was a signal reminding people to slow down, observe carefully, and avoid unnecessary risks until more information became available. The individuals who respected the dangers of the night often had a better chance of surviving than those who ignored them. Over countless generations, this pattern helped shape the emotional systems that still exist inside the modern human brain. That is why fear of the dark appears in cultures across the world and throughout recorded history. It emerges in children who have never encountered a predator and grows from instincts far older than modern civilization itself. The emotion survives because the conditions that created it existed for hundreds of thousands of years. Although the dangers have changed, the psychology remains. Today we live in homes protected by walls, locks, electricity, and technologies our ancestors could never have imagined. We can flood entire rooms with light and travel safely through the night with ease. Yet traces of the ancient world remain hidden beneath these modern comforts. A dark hallway can still feel unsettling. An unfamiliar noise can still capture our attention. A lonely walk at night can still trigger feelings that seem difficult to explain logically. These reactions remind us that the human brain was shaped long before cities, roads, and electric lights transformed the world. The next time darkness makes you feel uneasy, consider what that feeling really represents. It may be the memory of a time when survival depended on paying close attention to what could not be seen. It may be an echo carried forward from thousands of generations of ancestors who gathered around campfires and listened carefully to sounds beyond the edge of the light. Those ancestors survived because they respected uncertainty rather than ignoring it. Their caution became part of human nature. Their survival made our existence possible. And somewhere deep inside the modern mind, a small part of that ancient campfire still burns whenever the lights go out and the darkness returns.